falling in love is a ridiculous concept. You can't fall in love. You can fall in the pool, you can fall on your face, but you can't fall in love. If one wants to be happy, if one wants to be fulfilled, get married and have children. All of the arguments for waiting are so wrong.
Can you prove unequivocally also by the same notion that God exists? Welcome back to 30 Years in 30 Minutes. I'm your host, Michael Oved, and we've got a great episode for you today. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today's guest. Mark Gerson is an American investor, businessman, and philanthropist. He co-founded numerous businesses, including the Gerson Lehrman Group, GLG, which he grew to become the largest export network in the world, boasting over 1 million freelance consultants. He's also the founder of media company Thuzio and investing group 3i Members. Mark is also involved in several philanthropic organizations, having co-founded African Mission Healthcare Foundation and United Hatzalah. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. So good to be here. And
just to let the audience know, this is our first in-person interview of the 30 Years in 30 Minutes podcast. So really a big milestone in our podcast history.
Wow, I'm honored to be the first.
So we'll start with your college days. And obviously you're a tremendous entrepreneur, tremendous philanthropist. And my question to you is, what did you do in your college days that really set the foundation, laid the groundwork for your future successful entrepreneurial career?
I treated it like a job. And I think that's an important lesson, important discipline. Is I remember I got to college and I'm like, this is an incredible opportunity. I get to study with these interesting professors, with these terrific students, with these fascinating subjects. And I have a responsibility, which is to work hard and learn a lot and do well. So I treated it like a job. And treating it like a job, of course, means that there's plenty of opportunities for things outside of one's job. But I think when a student has the privilege and the opportunity to spend 4 years or however many years in college, I think they should take it as a responsibility and treat it like they would a job and work the same number of hours as they would if it were a job.
Surely, I mean, any worker, any person who graduates college and goes on to work for someone else, inevitably has to treat their work as a job. What did you do specifically in college that prepared you to go off on your own and become entrepreneurial?
Well, in college, not very much. I mean, in college, I focused on academics, again, like a job. And I wrote a senior thesis, which became my first book. And that book came out, I graduated Williams in 94, and the book came out, I think a year and a half later. So I spent a lot of time working on the senior thesis, which became a book, and a lot of time on the other subjects, and had plenty of time for all kinds of other things as well. Made some great friends, some lifelong friends, some friends that I talk to every day to this day. One friend in particular with whom I co-founded African Mission Healthcare, which is dear to the heart of my wife and me, and to John, my friend, and his family. And we talk every day. We work together every day. And these were relationships that were made in college.
So it really is, if you're talking to entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs in college, some graduates of college, what advice would you give to them how to make the most of their college days? Is it to write a senior thesis?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. I would say to make the most of your college days, one, don't drink. Okay? And there's nothing good that will come of alcohol. And let's not get even started on drugs. That's even worse. So don't drink and don't do drugs. Follow the law in both. And if there's unfortunately no law against drugs, pretend there was and follow it. But don't drink, don't do drugs. They completely waste your time. They rot your brain. Just terrible. So you could have such a great time, learn so much, make so many great friends in college without that stuff. Don't go anywhere near it. No drinking, no drugs. And I think so we can start from there. And so write a senior thesis? No, not necessarily. But I think take whatever you're studying seriously, just like you would a job. So if someone is studying the sciences, I don't know if that involves a senior thesis, maybe not, but take that seriously. Take whatever your chosen discipline seriously, and then explore and learn about a lot of other disciplines. And college gives anyone the great opportunity to do that, to take one thing very seriously and to learn a lot about all kinds of subjects, which this is probably the unique opportunity to study and learn, particularly in a community of such wonderful other people.
So, I mean, really what it comes down to is become an expert, really learn whatever it is you want to learn very well.
Yeah, you might not become an expert at that age and in those numbers of years, but develop the foundations upon which expertise can be attained.
And so now in the era of AI, and this is something we've spoken about in depth.
Yeah.
Do you still think it's beneficial to learn to understand field rather than perhaps develop certain leadership traits?
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think AI is an extraordinary tool. I mean, I went to college before the internet. I remember I heard the word internet for the first time on my graduation day. And that, of course, completely transformed the lives of everyone, really, in the months that followed, and of course, in the years and decades that followed. And I think AI is on that same trajectory. But what one can learn, what one can do with AI is extraordinary. It's an amazing tool, but that's what it is. It's a tool. So the skills of leadership, the discipline of leadership, the necessity of leadership really can and should be developed, cultivated, and obtained outside of AI. They're really two different things. AI is a tool, and leadership is a craft and a discipline, and the two will never come into contradiction.
Got it. And so moving on now to your founding of GLG, can you first tell us what GLG is and the story of the founding of GLG?
Sure. So we can go back even a couple of years before. So I started GLG in 98, and that was not out of college. I was out of law school. So I graduated Yale Law School in 98 and started GLG actually during law school. But after college, I taught high school at an inner city Catholic school in Jersey City. And I would say it was just a phenomenal experience and an experience of a lifetime. And one of the many lessons and learnings that I derived from that terrific year is what one should think about doing in the year or 2 or 5 immediately following college, which is do something that you might never have the opportunity to do again, and do something that involves deep service. Take advantage of the fact that you really don't care how much money you make. You have immense amounts of physical energy, probably really idealistic, and you have a lot to give at age 22, 23, 25. And so I would encourage everyone in college, when they're sophomores and juniors, to really think about how can I serve my community? How can I serve my country? And how can I do it in a way that involves my energy, my physical gifts, my lack of need for money, all those things. And there are so many different opportunities, many more now than there were when I was in college, just because it's so much easier to find things now than it was in the pre-internet days of the early 90s. So I would encourage people to consider teaching, joining the Peace Corps, joining the military. These are great things that a young person should consider doing rather than taking a conventional job right out of school. And let me tell you, Michael, no one ever turned 85 and said, my only regret is spending that year or 2 after college in deep service of others. No one ever said that. No one ever will say it. But I'm sure plenty of people have turned 85 and said, you know what? I didn't need to be doing that conventional job right out of college. I really wish I had taken that opportunity to serve my country in a deep and meaningful and full-time way. And in so doing, you'll develop all kinds of skills, all kinds of capabilities, all kinds of relationships that would have been unavailable otherwise. And you can always go back. Most people will go back to that job that they were thinking about taking in college, but they'll go back as a better, more mature man or woman.
And so to get talk more directly about your founding and how you founded GLG, would love to hear the story of that.
So I was in law school, and I met my founding partner of GLG, Thomas Lehrman, and during law school. And I realized when I was in law school that this was a great time in life to start a business because I had no financial obligations, no obligations of any kind, actually. And therefore, I could take all the risk in the world because there was nothing to lose. And so I wanted to start a business when I got to law school. I was always really intrigued by entrepreneurship. I always loved the idea of starting a business. I always loved the idea of creating a product or service that the world would need and people would pay for. It deeply intrigued me, and I wanted to do it. And I realized that in the year after school, in this case, in my last year during school, was really the perfect time in life to do it. And so we started GLG in 98. We started as a publishing company. The idea was that we would publish a series of books that would explain how industries would function. And we published a few of those books. And then one of the people who we went to sell those books to said early on, he said, I don't want to read the books. I want to talk to the author. We said, okay, why do you want to do that? And he said, because the questions I have are specific and they're highly unlikely to be covered in any kind of published text. And the person who wrote this book, he points to one in particular, he said, I bet she'd have answers to a bunch of my questions and would really help me make better investment decisions. So we said, okay, I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you. And we realized there's a marketplace here because the person saying this in this case was an investment manager, would be willing to pay for the knowledge, and the author, in this case the expert, would be willing to be paid to exchange that knowledge and to help educate this investor on the subjects that he wanted to be educated on. So that's how we started the GLG that is today.
And so looking back at the founding of GLG, do you have any regrets?
No, I mean, I think it was a very good decision, and I would encourage everyone who's entrepreneurially inclined. And not everyone should be entrepreneurially inclined. I mean, people say everyone should start a business. Nonsense. Not everyone should start a business. Just like not everyone should do any kind of job or enter any kind of occupation or discipline. But if someone wants to start a business, I think the right time to do so is now, particularly if now is when someone is young, energetic, and has nothing to lose. You know when the right time to start is when you have a good idea, or at least what you think might be a good idea, or at least what might become a good idea. So obviously every business starts with an idea, and the idea should be, here's an unmet need in the market. The unmet need is significant. People would be willing to pay to obtain this good or service, which I hope to create at less than the cost of producing it, or at the cost less than the cost they'd pay for it. And so that's a good idea. And so the market's got to be big. The idea's got to lead to a valuable good or service. And but one of the many great things about this incredible country, the United States of America, is that there are so many potential great ideas out there. And obviously these ideas have not been conceived of before, or else they wouldn't be ideas, they'd be businesses. But there are lots of great ideas that are waiting to be hatched. And I think they're waiting to be hatched by young people.
And so what advice would you give to college-age students young adults who've just graduated college, about how they can come up with good ideas?
Well, I think they should read the essay by Max Weber called Science as a Vocation. It's an essay, obviously you can get it online, but it was actually given as a lecture, I believe, at the University of Munich in around 1920. Phenomenal essay called Science as a Vocation. I read it in college under the tutelage of my great teacher, Professor Jeff Weintraub. And Max Weber talks about the nature of idea generation. And it was written over 100 years ago, but it gets it exactly right. And Max Weber says something like people work and work and work, hoping to get that idea. They don't get the idea. And then they are smoking a cigar on the couch or walking up an ascending street. And then the idea hits them. And then they got to work and work and work. So that's the nature of idea generation. So someone should not become frustrated if they work real hard and don't come up with the idea, because working really hard is the predecessor to coming up with a good idea, which can, and according to Max Weber, and I think he's right, it'll happen when you're least expecting it, when you're smoking a cigar on the sofa or walking up that ascending street or whatever the modern equivalent is. And then you got to get back to work. But I think if people just have a deep intellectual curiosity, they want to know how things work, why are people willing to pay for certain things, just that people are intellectually curious about business broadly defined, and they work hard, getting back to our point, Michael, about treating college like a job, and they work hard. Intellectual curiosity plus working hard, that leads to idea generation. Although the idea won't come when you can't call an idea to life. You have to work and work and work, be open, be intellectually curious, and then the idea will hit you at some point.
So moving on to United Hatzalah, you are the co-founder of United Hatzalah. How did that, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what exactly United Hatzalah is, but I want to hear the story of how United Hatzalah came about and what about your background influenced you to start Hatzalah? That
came about 23 years ago when I met Ellie Beer. And Ellie had volunteered as a very young man in his late teens, he had volunteered on an ambulance in Jerusalem and realized that he got to a lot of scenes when people had called the Israeli equivalent of 911, but had never saved anyone's life. And he realized he had not saved anyone's life because he always got there in an ambulance, and ambulances, in the best cases, take an average of 10 minutes to get to the person who called 911. That's still the case today. It's the case in New York. It's the case in Tel Aviv. It's the case in Chicago. It's the case everywhere. The average response time of an ambulance will never be fewer than 10 minutes because in the cities there's traffic and in rural areas there's distance. And Ellie's insight, his great insight, was that someone who calls 911 doesn't need an ambulance right away. He or she needs a trained and equipped first responder right away within the 3 minutes or ideally 90 seconds that can separate life from death. So when someone is choking, bleeding, having a heart attack or a stroke, they have about 3 minutes. And Ellie's insight was an ambulance isn't going to get there in time, but we can recruit, train, and equip enough volunteers in every community so that when someone does call 911, there's someone nearby, fully trained, completely equipped, who can get to that person in those precious moments and begin the emergency first response. Then the ambulance can come 8, 10, 12 minutes later, and the patient will be alive. And the people in the ambulance can continue treatment and can evacuate the patient to the hospital.
And what have you learned from the successes from your journey in founding and growing United Hatzalah with Ellie? What have you learned from there that aspiring entrepreneurs can take to their everyday lives in terms of starting and growing successful enterprises like that one?
Well, there are so many things I've learned, and I mean, being Ellie's partner has been the honor of a lifetime, and I've learned so much from and with him. And it's never too early to start giving charity significantly. Now, someone should give with exactly the same discipline that they invest capital as an investor, or they invest time or capital as a business operator, which is with a maniacal focus on ROI. But it's never too early, and when people get deeply involved in genuinely meaningful and high ROI charities, they'll meet lots of other like-minded people who they'll end up doing business with. They'll find themselves fulfilled. They'll find themselves with a purpose. They'll realize just how much impact they can have with the money that they make in the moment and when they become wealthier. And it's never too early to devote time and money to a genuinely worthy charitable enterprise. Now, genuinely worthy is a really important concept. And it's not easy to come to a charity that's genuinely worthy, but then again, it's not easy to start a business that's genuinely worthy of the market either. So that's really no excuse, but it's so rewarding and so meaningful. And as the Bible guarantees in Deuteronomy, the Bible says, if you give generously and enthusiastically to the poor, you will be blessed in all of your undertakings. And that's a material blessing. And I think people who get involved early and deeply in charity, they never regret it. And they experience lots of blessings, material blessings, spiritual blessings, all kinds of other blessings that are otherwise unavailable. So it's never too early to get involved significantly in charity, both with time and with money.
And you quoted Deuteronomy, and that leads me to your book that just came out, God Was Right. Can you tell us a little bit about the book, what it's about, your motivations for writing the book?
Yeah, sure. So the book it's called God Was Right, How Modern Social Science Proves the Torah is True. And I come to the Torah as a rationalist. I'm a rationalist, period. And so for 3,000 years, more than 3,000 years, people have been reading the Torah, which I characterize as from Genesis to Deuteronomy, 5 books of Moses. They've been reading the Torah and trying to assess its veracity. And for thousands of years, all we've had to go by is faith and experience. And in the 21st century, we have an entirely new tool, and this is modern social science, because modern social scientists, almost always without knowing it, are asking and answering the same questions that the biblical author asked. Because what is the Bible fundamentally? The Bible, it's definitely not a history book, definitely not a science book, not a cookbook. It's a guidebook, and it makes hundreds, maybe thousands of claims of guidance, how we should live our lives, that are entirely relevant to the present day. And using the tools of modern social science, who are asking the same questions the biblical author asked, we can finally assess with social scientific certitude, is the Torah true? Is it false? Is it true in some places and not so true in other places? Maybe anachronistic and therefore just a good book. And so what I did is in God Was Right, I think I have 33 different chapters on a wide variety of subjects ranging from dating to clothing to diversity to routine, wide variety of subjects, which was important because I wanted to assess comprehensively, is the Torah true? And what I found was that the Torah issues very specific, very practical, and very applicable guidance on pretty much every decision and opportunity that we have today in 2025. And what I've also found by the lights of modern social science, again, modern secular social science, is that the Torah is absolutely right in all of its claims, which is kind of astonishing for a couple of reasons. One, it's astonishing in its comprehensiveness. I mean, this is a book that addresses truly everything. And second, it's astonishing in the fact that it's now been proven correct on everything it says. So what are the implications of that? The implications of that was that the Torah is the quintessential and ultimate guidebook that no matter what faith we're in, we should study it. We should be devoted to it because it offers the best and now proven guidance for how to live a happy, successful, fulfilling, and meaningful life in the most practical ways.
And what would you say are the top 5 lessons, takeaways from the Torah about how to lead the most virtuous, the most happy life?
Well, I'll give one that I think might be especially relevant, Michael, to your audience, which is how do I? So, what's a question that every young person has asked, and every old person's asked, or just the younger people might be asking in real time that they've asked, which is how do I know that he or she is the one? Okay, in other words, how do I know if I should commit to him or her romantically? Obviously, and so this is a question that everyone asks or has asked. So let's see what the Torah says. So, because the Torah addresses the same question, and it does so when Sarah dies and Abraham, Sarah's surviving husband, decides that it's time to find a wife for their son Isaac. So Abraham sends his servant Eliezer to go find a wife for Isaac, and he tells Abraham tells Eliezer, go find a wife for Isaac in Haran. So why Haran? Because Haran is a place where Abraham had previously made souls. Whatever it means to make souls, Abraham did it in Haran, teaching us that Haran is a place where souls could be made. Haran was a good place. So what the Bible is telling us, when you want to find your spouse, go look in a good place. So Eliezer goes to Haran, and he meets this woman by the well. And he notices first that the woman is, quote, very fair to look upon. And then this woman who's very fair to look upon, she brings water for him and all of his camels, taking dozens of trips of water. So this woman is exceptionally generous. So Eliezer knows only 2 things about this woman, who turns out to be Rebecca. He knows that she's beautiful, she's very fair to look upon, and that she's exceptionally generous. So on the basis of those 2 characteristics, and only 2 characteristics, he says to her, essentially, you are the woman for my man Isaac. Again, 2 and only 2 characteristics that did not take him very much time to ascertain. And then Rebecca is given the choice, should I go with this man, with Eliezer, to marry Isaac, who she has not met? And she's given the choice. And people who say the Bible is sexist or something, they really don't know what they're reading. And this is one of many examples of that. Rebecca, this woman in ancient times, is given the choice. She says, I don't want to go with him. She doesn't go with him. So Rebecca, but she has to learn about Isaac before she makes a decision. So she learns only 2 things about Isaac. She learns, 1, that he's wealthy, so he's going to be a good provider, and 2, that he loves God. So on the basis of those 2, and again, only 2 characteristics, Rebecca says, I will go with you. I'll marry Isaac. So what do we learn from that? We learn that if you want to find a spouse, look in a good place, and then identify 2 characteristics that are suited for a good spouse. Now, whether his friends are funny is not one of them. Whether she likes warm or cold weather vacations is not one of them. Just find 2 characteristics that will genuinely make for a good spouse. 2 and only 2, and that's it. Someone might say that's rash. Say, okay, let's fast forward a little bit in Genesis to Genesis 24:67, which describes the union of Isaac and Rebekah. And the text tells us, and the order of what the text says is so important, as it often is in the Bible, as it usually is in the Bible. It says, he married her, she became his wife, and he loved her. 3 different things. He married her, she became his wife, and he loved her. 3 different things in order. So what's the Bible saying? The Bible's telling us, identify very few characteristics in the other person, then just get married. Don't think too much about it, just get married. Then start doing spouse-like things, because being married and being a wife must be different things. So get married, start doing spouse-like things, and then love will follow. Now, in the Western conception of romance, we have it the other way around. We say, first comes love, then comes marriage, and there's no distinction between being married and being a spouse. Now, what the Bible says is that love follows commitment. What modern romantic theory, to the expense of theory, says is that commitment should follow love. And we actually have this term, I fell in love with her. But falling in love is a ridiculous concept. You can't fall in love. You can fall in the pool, you can fall on your face, but you can't fall in love. What the Bible is telling us is love is not something you fall into. Love is something you cultivate. So identify someone with the right characteristics, get committed, and then love will follow. And then I went to the data, the modern social science. And so we asked, what's the marital happiness rate of people who practice in the conventional Western way? Well, that's pretty easy to figure out. The divorce rate is about 40 to 42%, down from the 80s. Sounds like good news, but it's not, because fewer people are getting married. So it's 40 to 42%. And then you add in the 20% of couples who are separated for 10 years or more and are not divorced. They're effectively divorced, of course, but they're not legally divorced, which it makes perfect sense why they wouldn't be. He needs her Social Security. She needs his health insurance. They don't hate each other. They don't want to get remarried. Why go through the hassle of getting divorced when we can live separately and even date other people? So, but they're effectively divorced. And then add to that the 7% who are chronically unhappy, and you get to a marital happiness rate among people who practice the way the Bible says don't do it. The marital happiness rate is in the 30s. So people who practice the way that I'm sure most of your listeners do, the marital happiness rate is in the 30s. But then you go to take India, for example. So India is still almost all arranged marriage. Now, it's what's called arranged marriage without coercion, which is exactly what Isaac and Rebecca had. Arranged marriage without coercion. Arranged marriage is saying, here's a girl or a boy who I think would be really good for you. I think they'd be a good spouse for you. Now, you can definitely say no. There's no coercion. You don't have to marry him or her, but I think they'd be really good for you. So arranged marriage without coercion is saying this is being arranged. You're not coerced. You can definitely say no, but take it seriously and don't take too long. So India still practices this. So India is an interesting case because India still practices arranged marriage without coercion, but India has adopted Western customs and culture in most other things. India has adopted Western clothing, Western medicine, Western capitalism, but not Western dating practices. So why not? Well, again, we can look at the marital happiness rates. The divorce rates in India are around 4 to 5%. That's one of the many demonstrations of heaven God was right, showing that the biblical formula was right. Also, because what happens when people follow the conventional Western way, i.e. not the way that people in India, and by the way, Orthodox Jews behave romantically in very much the same way as people in India. It's, again, arranged marriage without coercion. So many communities and sub-communities practice arranged marriage without coercion, and their divorce rates are always under 10%.
So you attribute the high divorce rates in global society today to the fact that people love before marriage. And you're saying don't love before marriage.
Well, I'm not even, they think they love, but,
you wouldn't know.
Well, they wouldn't know. I mean, they think they love, and sometimes they might actually love, but what the Bible's telling us and what the modern data shows is true, and I think modern experience also shows is true, is that love follows commitment. Love deepens with commitment. I mean, ask any happily married couple, do you love your husband or your wife more now that you have 3 or 4 kids than you did when you were married or not? It's going to be overwhelmingly, well, of course I love him or her more that we've built a life together, that we've had this commitment, and look at what this commitment's built. So I think the biblical claim that love follows commitment has been proven true, certainly by the data, but also just by experience.
So going back to something you said about the book and proving God is right, can you unequivocally say that the Bible has been proven, that the Torah has been proven right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can conclusively say the Torah has been proven right by the lights of modern social science and other very modern, very secular sources. Yes, the Torah has been proven right. And the Torah's claims on, and I say that because the Torah makes claims about everything. I mean, we just talked about the Torah's claims on dating. There's a chapter in God Was Right on dating. The Torah has been proven right about clothing, says lots of non-intuitive things about clothing. It's been proven totally right by the modern discipline, which has emerged in the last 10 years called fashion psychology. It's been proven right about both routine and the danger of routine, and how to solve for the danger of routine, which is newness in routine, covered in the book. So it's right when it's general, it's right when it's very specific, and the Torah makes very specific, very bold claims. And it's been right about everything. It's right about peer pressure. It's right about anti-fragility. It's right about everything. And that's what I found in God Was Right. It was kind of astonishing, but the Torah is right about everything, which says to all of us, like the great guidebook for living the kind of life you want to read, it is the Bible.
And can you prove unequivocally also by the same notion that God exists?
Absolutely. I mean, slightly different notion. Well, it's a very good question. Some of the same notion. All right. So what are the proofs that God exists? Well, I have those proofs in my immediately previous book, which is called The Telling, How Judaism's Essential Book Reveals the Meaning of Life. That's a book about the Haggadah, which guides us through the Passover Seder. And in that book, I go through the odds of some of the many things that had to happen for human beings to exist and indeed for the world to exist. And the odds for each of these many things happening at random is statistically 0. And then you combine all of these many things and it's just a plain 0. There's no way the world was created without an intelligent designer. And I have all the proofs of that in The Telling. But Michael, to your point, yes, you can also see that in God was right. Because, Michael, if someone said to you, or the smartest team of people that you knew at Harvard, I want you to write a guidebook that's going to cover everything in the year 6050. What would you say? You say you're crazy. You say no human being can do that. And you know what? You'd be right. No human being can do that. But the Torah, written more than 3,000 years ago, has claims about the decisions that we should make, how we should live our lives in the year 2025. And it's absolutely right. Whereas, of course, if you said to anybody, write the perfect guidebook for 3,000 years from now, the only response would be no human being or team of human being can do that. Well, the Torah did it. But if no man can do it now, then no man could have done it then, at least unassisted. And so who would have had to assist him? God.
That's so interesting and really interesting. So I would recommend to every single person listening, watching, buy the book, God Was Right, as soon as you finish this episode.
Thank you.
Now, just to close up the episode, we've spoken about a wide range of topics and ideas, and you've given a tremendous amount of advice today. If you could sum up your entire career, look back and sum it up into one piece of advice that you would give the next generation of aspiring entrepreneurs, what would you tell them? How can aspiring entrepreneurs truly succeed in this ever-changing world?
The most important advice I can give aspiring entrepreneurs is also the advice I would give people of the same age who are not aspiring entrepreneurs, but who want to do something meaningful in another field. And that is get married young. And I have all the data, and God was right about this, but it's so true. If one wants to be happy, if one wants to be fulfilled, get married and have children. It's the formula for doing so. It's the ultimate source of blessings is a spouse and children. And the sooner you can do it, the better. And Michael, as we talked about before, and there's so much more on this, and God was right, but all of the arguments for waiting are so wrong. And my wife's a rabbi, a Reform rabbi, and we throw Shabbat dinners every quarter for Jewish singles looking to get married. And so encourage them, just like I'm so encouraging all of your listeners. Like, this is the ultimate blessing. It's the ultimate source of happiness. Just get married young. All of the arguments for waiting are totally wrong. They've been proven wrong. I go through it, and God was right. They're totally wrong. There's no argument for waiting. Not a single one that's has stood up against the data, against the evidence. Forget the Bible, against the modern data, the modern evidence. So I think if anybody, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you're aspiring to a totally different field, or you're not sure what you want to be, the one thing you should be sure of is let's try to get married by 25, 26.
Yeah.
Even earlier if you can, which you can. But again, the biblical advice is so right. And because, it's a slight aside, but the greatest psychological study of all time was the Grant study done out of Harvard. And it started when President Kennedy was a sophomore. And it was a longitudinal study that studied this cohort of Harvard students. And then at some point in the many decade course of the study, it picked up non-Harvard students from Boston. And the study's now concluded because that generation has passed on. And I think it was the fourth leader of the study, because there were, I think, 4 leaders of the study, each of whom served for a long time, but the study lasted for many decades. The fourth leader said, at the beginning of this study, nobody even contemplated relationships as a source for ongoing happiness. But at the end of the study, we've concluded that the 3 most important things for living a happy life are relationships, relationships, and relationships. This is the Grant study at Harvard, the greatest study of all time, the study that began when President Kennedy was a sophomore. He was in the study, and the study wanted to determine over the course of a lifetime of each of the participants what constitutes human happiness. And they came away with these 3 things at the end: relationships, relationships, relationships. And the most important relationship that someone is going to have ever is with their spouse. So don't delay it. You will not make a better decision by waiting. You very well may pass over really great people for no good reason. So just encourage people to, thank you for the recommendation to read God Was Right, and read that one chapter on love and marriage. And I think there's one chapter on relationships and then one chapter on love and marriage. And if a young person in their teens or early 20s wants to focus on one thing, I would say it's focused on relationships, and particularly the marital relationship.
And what about, before we go on to the rapid fire questions, the 5 rapid fire questions, what about advice to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to succeed specifically in entrepreneurship? What would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Work really hard at whatever you're working on. Be intellectually curious and be open for an idea. When you have that idea, and I have a section on this in the book too, in the work and rest section. Don't fall in love with the idea. Don't fall in love with your idea. Test that idea. Find people who are not your best friends, not your parents. Find people who have your best interest at heart, but have a little separation. By the way, this is another biblical advice: is that the great mentor in the Bible was Jethro. He was Moses's Gentile father-in-law and his mentor, and he was able to give such great mentorship because he was separate from Moses. He was not of the Jewish people. He was a Midianite. And so what do we learn from that? We learn that advice and mentorship comes from people who are a little separate from you, who care about you like Jethro did to Moses, but are a little separate. So advice to an entrepreneur is, when you come up with that idea, find people who care about you, but have some distance from you, and ask them for their unvarnished, honest feedback. Because very often when if an entrepreneur doesn't do that and they ask someone else, what do you think about this business? The person is going to take the path of least resistance and say, it sounds great. But if you say to someone, look, I'm asking this because I really respect your judgment and I want you to assess this idea, then you'll get really good feedback that might help you make it a better idea. It might help you realize it's not an idea, or it might help you realize it's a great idea. And then keep doing that, but always keep testing all these assumptions. And then when you have that idea, just go with it, particularly at a young age.
Wonderful. Now on to the rapid fire questions. I'm sure you know how this works. I'll ask you a series of questions, 5 questions to be precise, if you can answer very quickly.
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite book?
The Bible.
What is your deepest regret?
As Frank Sinatra said, have none.
What is a quote that you live by?
Well, can I use a quote I try to live by?
Yes.
From the Bible, be holy. I try to. I have not achieved it, but I try to, which is another biblical principle. Keep trying.
What is the most important mitzvah in the Bible?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, there is no single most important mitzvah in the Bible. There are many mitzvahs which are very important, but be holy. You could say be holy is because it's the catch-all. Because you could say all mitzvahs flow into be holy, but be holy again is an aspiration. We have to try to be holy, but we're never going to achieve it.
And if you could do one thing differently, knowing what you know now, if you can do one thing differently when you were 21 years old, what would you do differently? Well,
I go back a few years earlier, and I would have played basketball in high school, but there's something to that. I mean, you get to be my age, you get to be 52, and you know, you can't do you really can't do sports anymore safely, very many of them. So, it's again, I believe in Frank Sinatra, don't have regrets, always look to the future, learn from the past, but look to the future. But learning from the past doesn't mean having regrets. It means learning from the past and looking to the future. So, but I would say, you know, when you're young, when you're 21, when you're around that age, just take full advantage of your physical gifts and your energy. Playing sports is just one of that. That's by far not the most important one. The most important one is the best outlet for your physical gifts and your energy is doing deep service to other people using those physical gifts and energy.
Make the most of your youth.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
As Frank Sinatra said, youth is wasted on the young. Don't waste your youth, even though you're young.
Mark, this has been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you, hear your thoughts, hear your ideas, hear your advice to the next generation. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak.
Oh, Michael, thank you so much. What a great conversation.
Of course, really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to 30 Years in 30 Minutes. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments if there's anyone else you want to hear from.